Welcome back to part two with Al Leiter. And Al, again, pleasure to have you here. Al, talk about how you began pitching. When did it start?
Well, you know, we're talking much about pitching, and I do love this. And I know, you know baseball as well as anybody that's been around amateur baseball for years. And I think of the opportunity that I've had now with my son, Little League, and, you know, even just any kid who enjoys the sport and is throwing a baseball. But I think back to, and some of your questions was, you know, when did you know you had it and when did you think you were going to be a big leaguer? Playing catch with my father. Grew up down in the Toms River area. I'm the last of 7 children. I have 5 older brothers, a twin sister. My oldest brother was a Tom Seaver fan, loved to emulate his delivery. He was a pitcher. My second brother was a catcher. The rest of them were pitchers. But I remember, as the youngest, having opportunities to play catch with your father. And my dad used to say this, and maybe people who watch my game, certainly Mets games, you know, would say, wow, that's pretty amazing because you didn't have great command. You walked a lot of guys. But my father imparted on me early on to, when you're playing catch, hit me in the chest. And he'd get that glove, and he would, you know, play here. And I wanted to play catch with my father. I mean, for as much as I could get my older brothers and maybe a buddy down the street, you're playing catch with your dad. And I remember, you know, if it wasn't here, come on now, hit me in the chest, hit me in the chest. And it just, the conditioning of me trying to hit my father in the chest. I still, you know, I can remember it, even as I speak with you now. And the game was that if I threw over his head more than once or twice, he would walk away. So the carrot was, one, I wanted to play catch with my father, but it made me in tune to hit him in the chest, as opposed to just jerking around, throwing the ball all over the place and not having a consequence. So the consequence was keep dear old dad on the side of the house. And, you know, it really got me thinking, you know, boom, boom, boom.
Target.
Target, boom, 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 boom.
Well, you go on, and of course, you have an outstanding career at the major league level, which we talked about in our first segment. But Al, why don't you help me out a little bit? Let's go over some pitching and some pitching techniques, some grips, some of the action the ball takes, and maybe the purpose that you may have when you throw that pitch. Can we start off with some fastballs?
Yes, I would love to, John. But here, you know what I want to say, that, and this is a misnomer, because if people talk about, and you mentioned about the different pitches, a 4-seamer or a 2-seamer. Well, guess what, folks? This is one continuous seam. There are 2 peanuts that are on this baseball that actually are 2 pieces of leather that's comprised of lace that goes around, but it's actually one seam. It's one continuous seam. But what 4-seam fastball is your truest, straightest, fastest throw. And whether you're an infielder, an outfielder, or a pitcher or a catcher, you ultimately want to get to a 4-seam grip. 4-seam meaning this, and I just said it's one seam. Fingertips across, I always teach your middle finger is bigger than your index finger. This is fatter than this part. I put my longer finger on this side. Now it can change. I know David Wells, then you get to a point where maybe you like your 4-seamer on the other side for just pure preference of comfort. I threw it this way. And the 4-seam is when the ball comes out of your hand, these 4 seams actually are coming toward home plate. It's your truest, fastest throw. It cuts through the air. Based on the dynamics of these seams, it ends up being, in my opinion, your fastest, straightest throw, as I said. 2-seam fastball is in between the 2 seams. I put my fingertips in between the seam. I didn't want to stay on the seam. It would allow more friction. More friction on the baseball would slow the baseball down. Out on your fingertips. This is another part of a fastball that, you know, is important. And I know little kids have to choke the ball because they don't have big hands. But you want a little space between this V from your thumb to the inside part of your index finger, because this allows your wrist to be relaxed and to have better life on the baseball. Firm fingertip pressure, loose wrist. So 4-seam fastball right through the zone. 2-seam is a sinker. Why it's a sinker? When thrown properly, you throw it off your index finger, and the ball ultimately should roll off to where you're getting more index finger pressure, and as a result, your hand behind the baseball and the dynamics of the 2 seams now coming at home plate, the ball actually should sink or sail. So this would be your sailing, preferably not sailing. Sailing would be you got around it, you got underneath the baseball, and the ball will sail, as opposed to on top of the baseball, come down through. Now I say that, John. I got to the Yankees in '04. Mel Stottlemyre was the pitcher coach, and Mel would teach a 2-seamer by going on one of the seams and riding down and hug the horseshoe, hug the seam. Still the same premise of index finger pressure, hand behind the baseball, but come through this way. So there's different ways, obviously. 4-seam, pretty clear. 2-seam, there's different creative ways of throwing.
Now, if you're in a game Al, and your fastball's working, do you usually change off that four seam and go to a two seam at any time, or do you just stay with the four seam until they prove otherwise?
I was a guy that consistently threw four seam fastball, cutter, which evolved from Ron Guidry teaching me a slider via through Dave Righetti. This was my cutter slider. I would call it a slider, but guys eventually start saying, "When did you throw that cutter?" I don't know. I throw a slider. This was my cut fastball. Middle finger pressure, all the pressure on the middle finger down through the baseball. The problem with the cutter is, especially kids don't throw curveballs. Or I'm sorry, I don't know what you teach, but I don't know the age yet. Maybe it's freshman year. What do you teach?
We teach a lot of this.
Thank you. Do you see what he just did? Circle changeup. Choke the ball. Now what I just said about a fastball, you have space grip, firm fingertip pressure, loose wrist. Choke down on the baseball. The more friction you put on the baseball and restrict the wrist, it's going to slow the baseball down. So trust the grip. You'll hear that often. Trust the grip that this will actually slow the baseball. John Olerud, who I respect the heck out of, hands down the hardest pitch for him to hit, and he was a heck of a hitter, was a changeup. Something that I wasn't able to command. It was a fourth secondary pitch. I mentioned fastball, curveball, slider, changeup. A changeup is a unique pitch because you really have to stay inside the baseball. Here's the OK changeup. OK sign, usually two seam. Really stay underneath the baseball, don't get around it, and come through the baseball. And you hear about a window shade. Instead of reaching out and snapping the ball, a changeup is you actually get out in front of your front leg and actually literally kind of pull your hand straight down, thus taking some velocity off softer front leg. Usually you don't push off as much, your stride's a little shorter. But I agree with you, fastball changeup, because, and I'm not going to say this, at the major league level, when I threw a curveball, I felt, when thrown properly, didn't have more torque or stress than my violent fastball. But when you're young and you see a kid throw, they usually want to get down, drop their elbow, and they get around it. Because now they get this little frisbee thing, and they think it's cool. They look at it and say, wow, that's a curveball. No, you're getting down, you're getting around, it becomes all arm. And that's where you have some elbow trouble and some arm trouble, as opposed to properly being on top of the baseball, being out in front and pulling down, using your back, your shoulders, your stomach, your butt.
Al, with the curveball, you see a number of different variations of a curveball. Can you explain to us what is a 12-6 and what is just a curveball that maybe just breaks off the plate at a wide angle?
The grip varies. I held I just said my slider was this way. Made sure I stayed behind the baseball. Middle finger and a slider. A slider you want about a foot or so break. That's your home plate now, and it's going to start as a lefty from here and end up here. And it's quick. If you're throwing 90 miles an hour, your slider should be about 83, 84 miles an hour, 5 or 6 miles an hour slower. I ended up throwing a cutter that got smaller and literally went lateral. So now, if a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, I'm throwing my cutter 88, 89, almost as fast as my fastball. You mentioned about what's a cut fastball. Cut fastball is just that. It's a fastball that cuts, and it's a power pitch. It's not even a slider. Slider's a power breaking ball, unlike a curveball is where you want to take some velocity off. So the curveball I held on the seam, and I pulled, again, all middle finger. You'll see guys that'll do a knuckle curve. They'll get this finger off the baseball. A 12-6 is the more you can get on top of the baseball and get down through it to where you can get this tumbling effect of the rotation coming to home plate, you're going to get 12-6, the hands of a clock from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. John, you know this because you know baseball, that this is ideally what you want on a curveball. I didn't want any kind of, as a left-hander, from 11 to 4, 11 to 5. Definitely didn't want 10 to 4 because it became a slurve, where the break got around it. Because now you're caught in between a fastball, a slider, curveball, slurve. What is that? So best you can do is curveball on top. You got the tumbling effect straight down. Usually about best curveball. And I looked at watching Messina at the end there. His curveball variation was 12 to 15 miles an hour slower than his fastball, which is phenomenal.
And Lincecum too. Today we watched Lincecum out there, a little guy with a terrific variation of curveballs.
That's right. And that's all based on grip. You're getting comfortable. I remember Sandy Koufax used to tell me, who I got near and dear with when I was with the Mets, and he's very good friends with Fred Wilpon, the owner. Sandy would tell me, he said, you're not trying to make the ball break or power curveball. Think about how many times you can have the ball spin before it gets to the catcher. You know what? And the semantics of it was, yeah, I get that. I'm going to try to spin the baseball. And Sandy had an unbelievable curveball.
Unbelievable fastball.
Unbelievable fastball. Unbelievable stuff. Unfortunately getting hurt. But so I thought about that. So now I'm on the mound. I'm throwing a curveball. I'm thinking about how I can spin the baseball, because the revolutions and the spin, as tight as you can get, makes that ball. Mentioned about A.J. Burnett earlier. about his great curveball being as good as anybody when he's on.
Well, we also talked about strike one and the importance of strike one. Now, on every different level, managers, coaches say, get strike one. Let's get ahead of the hitter. With youth baseball, strike one's right down the middle. What is strike one at the professional level, at the major league level, and why is it so difficult to throw?
Well, wait a minute. Now I'm going to have to ask you. When you said, so you believe strike one is the most important pitch?
I do.
Okay, but what kind of strike one?
Well, that's my question to you. You're the ex-major leaguer. I'm the little league coach.
There's no question about it, but at the major league level, and let's just keep it at little league. Yes, little league level. I don't know of too many A-Rods. There might be a special kid who can hit the ball out of the ballpark, but strike one is paramount. But when you get to higher levels, if you have a guy that is swinging from the on-deck circle, a la, Soriano was a guy who used to swing, Benji Molina, I remember Doug Lanville. There's a handful of Mark McLemore. These
Just
guys,
free swingers.
Free swingers. Get up there and they are swinging. Jose Reyes when he's not. I don't know if strike one is good to this guy. And if it is, maybe it's not a strike one fastball. It's a strike one little curveball.
Very good point.
Or a strike one that looks like a strike one. The precision of a major league pitcher, if they're worthy of their stature of being a frontline starter or frontline pitcher, is that you have the ability. Can I have that blue folder? You have the ability to break a strike zone down into quadrants. I'll go this way. Middle of the plate is the middle of the plate is the hitters. This area is danger for any pitcher. You want to stay out of this. When I think strike one, even though you want to start, the rule of thumb, especially, and I'm speaking on both sides here because I'm talking to the little leaguer or the Babe Ruth or the high school kid. Ideally, you want to start from the plate and work your way out from strike one, 0-1, 0-2, 0-2. 1-1, depending upon how you come on the plate or off the plate. But ideally, as a major leaguer, I would think by thirds. And Sandy, you say that. You're not pitching to thirds, you're pitching to corners. I mean, this is how even more precise it gets to a Greg Maddux or Tommy Glavine or, when a Roy Halladay's on or Pettit, anybody, pick your guy. So I would then look for thirds. And my third would be usually on this side of the plate, right-handed hitter, that I'm thinking strike one here. Not black in corner, strike one. This is the quality. This is the money pitch. Black corner off the plate. 0-2, 1-2. Any two-strike count that you're in the favorable pitcher's count. 0-2, 1-2. 2-2 is a critical pitch. You mentioned about strike one. There's no doubt about it. 0-0 to get to 0-1. The batting average goes down greatly. But if you see more games than not, and they'll get a strike one. Next pitch is a 1-1. I think the 1-1 pitch is as critical, maybe more, because very seldom. Does an 0-1 pitch either result in a first pitch out? Because also, too, you know what the batting average against? First pitch, put the ball in play, 375 in Major Leagues. So, with that said, you have a guy that throws strikes, and we saw it in the postseason with Halladay and Cliff Lee. It throws a lot of strikes. Well, what's the approach against a guy that throws a lot of strikes? Swing early. Okay, but is he throwing strike one down the middle, meatball, Cliff Lee? No. These guys are throwing good pitches, corner. Strike. So you roll one, but they're good pitches. Outer third, inner third, maybe corner, maybe throws a big curveball, strike one. So it is important. But I think the pitch of reckoning is, and you watch enough games, is that 1-1 pitch.
It's the swing pitch. It's the swing pitch for the count.
Because, the difference between 1-2 and 2-1 psychologically for the hitter and the pitcher is tremendous swing. I go from 1-1 pitch, however I got there. Fastball, strike one, fastball, and ball. I'm a 1-1 count. I come back with a 1-1 curveball, ball. I'm 2-1. Hitter sees fastball, strike, fastball, ball, curveball, ball. Okay, so now I'm a 2-1 count. I could even take a nasty pitch here to go 2-2. I'm still okay. He throws a pitch that's off the plate. I'm 3-1. Now I have two pitches. I'm a driver's seat. So, yes, strike one's important. I would profess to the lower levels. Think meaty part of the plate, down in the zone. Mention about low in the zone, low thigh, knee high. If you can go across the plate, it's not going to be dangerous. Even if you have an aggressive kid, base hit, oh well, who do I got, double play? Move on that way. Yes, it's important, but I also think equally as important is when you get into the count on the 1-1 pitch.
Now, you've had a number of big games and big situations. Do you have a strikeout that really stands out against a quality hitter in a crucial time?
I, there are some at-bats that come to mind. One was in Game 1 of the '93 World Series. Dave Stewart, whoever was the starter, boy, oh boy, it goes back, came in bases loaded, 2 outs. John Kruk was up. I was the 5th starter swing guy that year. Was coming off surgery a couple years prior. And heat of the moment. Game was tied. I come in. John Kruk was a 300-plus hitter. They had a heck of a team, the Phillies. And I strike him out with the cutter down and away, swing and miss. Beautiful pitch, whatever. Just that moment. And still remember it, because the next inning we end up getting 2 or 3 runs, and I actually get the win, as the pitcher of record in the 7th inning or whatever it was. I do remember that. I remember when Barry Bonds, the year that he broke McGuire's home run record, it was at Shea Stadium. It was late in the year, and he was short of the 71 or whatever he needed, 72. I should know that. Art Howe's the manager, and everybody was pitching around Barry. I said, I'm not pitching around Barry, and we were out of it. We stunk that year, and I pitched to him. And there was some, the crowd was crazy. It was at Shea, but I don't know whether they were rooting for Barry to get the home run or not. And I remember striking him out, and he ended up going 1 for 4 or something. His last at bat, he ended up hitting a triple in right center field. He slides into third base. He was already 0 for 2 or 0 for 3. And I actually pitched a well-pitched game, and he looks at me, and Barry could be Barry. I'd be nice.
A little surly, a little standoffish.
So he slides in third, and he looks at me, and he winks. And it wasn't a wink like I got you. It was a wink.
Respect.
No, it was thanks. Because he was getting pitched around. And I'm going to go after Barry. And I think I struck him out 1 or 2 times before that. Good curveball. But I remember the frozen moment. It was a meaningless game standing-wise for us, but the moment, for him and the game.
Is there a large variation between mounds at different stadiums, and how does that affect you?
It's not supposed to be, and hopefully nobody from Major League Baseball will be watching this, but yes. There's teams will change not only their mound slope based on their staff, but also the height of the infield grass will be higher or lower based on the pitcher that's coming up tomorrow, the next day. I remember pitching with Tommy John with the Yankees.
Sinker ball pitcher.
Sinker ball pitchers. By the time Tommy got the pitch, it would be Guidry, whoever, and then TJ, and the grass would go zzz. By the time Tommy was pitching on Friday, the grass was super thick at Yankee Stadium. So that's home field advantage. I remember in Florida, Larry Rothschild, we had a good pitching staff. Maybe the hitters were not as good as the pitching staff. And the bunting circle, you don't think much of this. The bunting circle, soften it up. Save you about 15, 20 hits a year from Major League Club. How many balls do you see when the balls come in, balls hit squarely, hits off the bunting circle before it shoots out to the middle infielder? And that little, as opposed to something rock hard.
Slows it down?
Slows it down. Gives you a shot at, your slick middle infielder, boom, can get it out as a result of just that little slow. So that was one aspect. I love pitching at Veterans Stadium. Their mound was, I know in, 68, the mounds all went down? I think they forgot to give the note to the vet because it was a high mound, and it was difficult because early in the game, not only is it a high mound, but it's the slope. I always liked, even if it was, I thought the Astrodome was terrible. I couldn't believe Nolan Ryan pitched there all those years. I mean, he was phenomenal. But if you could see this, it's not so much how high it is, it's this, the pitch. And the vet had, the pitch was like this, which you want. If your timing is right and you're landing properly and you're out over your front leg and you're utilizing your big muscles, I'm getting this trajectory down the home plate, which is beautiful. Let the hitter see the top half of the baseball. But if you end up throwing on a flat mound and you're pushing the baseball and that ball's coming in straight, that's when they square it up. So the first inning or so at the vet, you're throwing in and you're waiting for the landing, and it's just and we're talking about this much, but you know what? It can affect a visiting pitcher because it's different, and it's all part of the game. It's beautiful.
What ballpark did you not want to be in because of maybe the way the ball carried, a ball that was unfriendly to pitchers? I mean, they all talk about Colorado, of course, because of the altitude, but beyond Colorado, was there Fenway Park?
I liked them all. I know it's going to sound cheesy. I thought they were. I didn't like the Kingdome. I didn't like indoor stadiums, and I get traded to Toronto. But I thought it felt fake. The Metrodome I never really cared for. Didn't like the Kingdome, which was. I said the Astrodome. It just didn't feel, you know, I want to.
Baseball.
Yeah, the air, the grass, you know. But I was in the big leagues. I love Tiger Stadium, the old Tiger Stadium, or going to Wrigley. No, I was one of those people who just, I would get there early. My first few years in the big leagues, I'd get to the big leagues, and I used to do stadiums, run the steps, but I purposely did it, aside from keeping my legs in shape, but I would run the stadium on the upper deck, and then just get the perspective of all these stadiums from way up above, because, you know, we're in the dugout all the time. It's kind of cool to get a different vantage point. And I used to like that, just to be in these ballparks and seeing stuff that I seen on TV as a kid.
Well, you know, we have a few minutes left, Al, and, you know, I want to wind it down talking a little bit about the wonderful things Al Leiter does. And I know you're too modest to talk about it, but you've won just about every humanitarian award that Major League Baseball gives out. And the Roberto Clemente Award, which you must be very, very proud of, you do a lot. Why?
Because it's the right thing to do. I never saw it as a right when I got to the big leagues. I made a nice living for my family and people who I'm near and dear to. I think it was my upbringing of knowing that I came from a modest means where I grew up. I understood and understand the differences of privileged and not. I've always kept my feet grounded. I also realized that part of the duty as a major league player was the other stuff. And the other stuff is to give back in your community, to help others that need help, or you can make a difference in their lives. Created a foundation in '95 or so. My wife and I, Leiter's Landing, basically, you know, we gave away money to charities and causes that were near and dear to what we thought mattered, and we just did our part. It absolutely was part of the upbringing, and I go to a couple stories, but one in particular, and my brother was not only a Met fan, but he was a Mickey Mantle fan back in the day. And my father took my two oldest brothers, John and Carl, up to the old Yankee Stadium, the old Yankee Stadium. And after the game, they waited for Mickey. Mickey came out late, and you know, it was much more friendly back then. But the press gate, as we know it, the fans were much closer, a little barrier. And Mickey came out. He had towels like a horse blinder that was pretty thick from side to side. His head down, the kids were screaming, and I get it, because I wasn't at Mickey's status, but there's that one kid, that John Leiter, who was down in Berkeley Township, that had his father wait 2 hours because he wanted to see the Mick. And to this day, my brother will tell you, he said, he didn't even wave. You know what, and not to like be, you know, talk bad about a guy who was a great player, but I took that as my opportunity as a major league player. I'm privileged. I was given an opportunity. So I think of my brother, because there's often when you come out, hey, Leiter, okay, it's only a minute, you know, you go over, hello, and it goes so far. I see more kids, I'm 45 now kids, I see people in their 30s like, hey, you were good to me, I was a little guy, and I'm looking at them like, oh my God, I thought you were my age. You know, I remember we were such and such, and you waited, and it's the right thing. So I mean, you ask, you know, to give back.
Well,
it's part of it.
I have to tell you, Al Leiter, I know you've been in Summit now for a year, and the feedback is that you are a first-class gentleman, you are available, you are nice. It must be tough, though. I mean, we all have our moods, we all have our moments. You know, you go out to the store, and I'm sure that everybody says, there's Al Leiter, and that one time, you know, that maybe you're just in a hurry, or you might be in a different place. You know, that kind of reverberates out. So it must be a difficult position to be in a high profile, but yet you handle it as well as anybody can. And, you know, by the way, your life in Summit, how's it going?
It's good. It's good. You know what? Made the move. I'm grateful for my wife, who was from Florida. We came up to the area. We picked Summit. We love it so far. It's not far from my work in MLB Network in Secaucus. We're near the city. We've taken advantage of the train and all the wonderful things of this area. I've known this Summit area for years, since growing up, and I've always liked the feel of this little corridor here on 78 and the neat little towns.
Well, listen, this was wonderful. You have so much information to share. I would love to have you back down the road, Al. I know you're busy, sure, but I am very grateful that you joined the Coach's Corner, and once again, best of luck moving forward.
My pleasure.
Think your best days are ahead.
Thanks. Thank you.
And thank you for joining Coach's Corner.